Hello, this is a new episode of Chatiran, and on this one we have Stewart Noakes, also known as co-founder of Canopy, and also known as the father of Tribe, that is one of the communities around Canopy, also known as one of the entrepreneurs in Portugal, India, US, and UK, where he supports a lot of new startups that are trying to develop new ideas and new business in a global market. So, Stuart, should I say Stuart, or may I say Stu, as we talk on a daily basis? Uh, it's always a privilege to talk with you, and you know it. And let's start talking about serendipity, because it's something that you are always talking about, and you say that is something that we should have in our daily basis work and in our companies.
Empathy, Fernando. It's a tough thing, right? It's an amazing concept, and it's brilliant to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be with you today. I think it's a really good example of how Tribe fits together is this empathy. And we also talk a lot about serendipity, and a word that keeps coming up a lot at the moment is simpatico. I don't know how that word works for you, but it comes up a lot in what we're doing. And if I tell a little bit of the story of Tribe, then it might be a great way to exemplify what we mean by empathy. So as most people who've heard of Canopy know, we run a demo night every month, and my fixation and my obsession is running that in Lisbon. We've now run that for 46 consecutive monthly editions, which is something in itself, and never been done by Canopy anywhere else in the world, not even in Boston where we started. And at about, I don't know, 20-ish editions in the evening in a January, and quite a warm evening, we're outside in like a courtyard area talking with people at the end of the evening. And a very drunk, very nice Brazilian guy comes up to me, and Nelson, who's the president of Tribe, will hopefully remember this, because he was a little bit drunk. And he came up to me and he said, "Stu, we love everything about Demo Night. I come here for nearly every edition. We get free beer, we get free pizza, we've made friends here, we've done business here, we enjoy being here. And a few of us have got together and we just want to give you some money." And I looked at him and I was like, "Nelson, you're drunk and I love you, but you need to go away now." And he's like, No, we just want to give you some money because we want this to keep going. We don't want it to stop." And all these different parts of the value, if you like, of what we're getting mean something to us. And we want to tell you that, but we also want to give you some money. And two or three of them came around and I was sort of talking, and I thought, it's lovely to hear, but they don't mean it. It's just drunk talk at the end of the evening. But there was enough there that when I went back to my room in the evening, I did what Nelson had asked, and I put a little membership together, which is now called Tribe. And I just put like a small price on it. And I sent them the link, and it was maybe 1 a.m. at this point when I sent them the link. And for British people, that's very late, okay? But then within 15 minutes, Nelson had signed up, and so had 3 of his buddies. And they'd been true to their word. They meant what they said, and they'd had this empathy with the community, and they were part of the community, but they could see what it meant to other people, and they turned that empathy into very constructive action. But then they did this thing, which I think is amazing, which is they advocated for the very thing they'd now created, and they stood up in demo nights, they stood up in coffee shops, they stood up in all sorts of places and said, "This is a really good idea. We think you should join too." And they would say to people, "You've been to 3 demo nights. Why aren't you a member of Tribe?" I'd be just standing there like, "What just happened?" Right? And they meant it. They were like true. Like the way they felt about the community was the way we as co-founders hoped people would feel about it, but they were really showing it. And then that base grew and it became more international. And then that group started to do something completely different, which was not just be paying a few euros a year to be a member of the community. The group started giving us ideas, and the group started co-hosting events, and the group started holding us to account as an organization and saying, "Well, look, guys, that's an interesting thing you're doing, but it's not good enough." Or, "What an amazing idea, let's do more of it." And what happened, and everybody who's a marketeer will probably say, "Well, that's really interesting, and that's really like almost like brand advocacy." But what changed in our events was co-creation now. So it wasn't my voice or Pedro's or Sylvia's or any one person bringing things to life. It was a co-creation where we listened very hard to what they were saying. We co-hosted events together. Nelson and Thomas and others got up and hosted segments and introduced startups and did more than just be part of the community. And our net promoter score went from sort of 60, 65, which was brilliant and as good as I'd ever hoped to get it, to 75, 85, 90, 93 was the last one we measured. And that's because it's now resonant with the community in a different way, because it's built by the community for the community, and it just gives a different vibe to everything that we're trying to do. And sometimes this is a really interesting reflection on like almost reverse empathy, which is I enjoy going to our events because I don't always know what's going to happen. Like, as the organizer and as the creator, yeah. And so what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that empathy between some drunk Brazilian guys and a tired British guy at the end of a Lisbon-based demo night has created something very special. And I don't think we could have done that by design. I think we did that through the mutual understanding and the kind of simpatico that I talked about at the start.
Yeah, let me do just a small disclaimer. Nelson will be might be a little bit drunk on that day, but he stood with his word and is always pushing even further the tribe, right?
Hugely,
Um,
hugely.
I need to talk with Nelson to also to invite him to one of our podcasts because he's a very interesting guy to talk with, and he's always pushing not only for his business and for the tribe itself, but he's always trying to connect people with other people, and that it's
Yeah.
a very interesting thing from the tribe. The Canopy tribe is people are not only engaged with the main goal of doing their own business, but people engage to support the tribe to make even more business between them, not in a closed project or in a closed club, business club, but in an open way, because every single month or every single week we see new people getting in the tribe community, and I don't know how many nationalities are represented now at tribe, but there are a few, right?
Yeah, I mean, it spans a global base now, which is amazing, and it's inspiring. And it also is doing things like, the membership has renewed, so people have gone through renewal cycles, so we know it's sticking with people, and we've got very very little attrition, if any, that I can recognize from our stats. And we see it ebb and flow. So people have life cycles. They have things going on in their lives. There are pandemics or other things that affect their businesses, and so they sometimes are hyper engaged and other times very quiet. And we see people going through these cycles of coming back in and out because they feel the support, but they also feel the time in their lives to give the support to others, which is also really cool. And I can say that I've benefited from that support, as well as given that support as well inside the tribe. So the community that we've all created is now supporting all of us in one way, shape or other, during good times and in bad. And we've chosen to make opportunities to celebrate together, as well as to recognize moments where we need to help each other.
Yeah.
And it's thanks to people like Nelson we even have a manifesto. He's kicked us hard enough for long enough that we've managed to co-create a manifesto as an organization, as people who organize the community and also people from within the community. And that manifesto is now unique and will be driving us for the next 2 or 3 years to achieve it. And we've published that and become accountable for that as well, and even applied these kind of principles into different companies that are working within the UK particularly, and bringing this kind of spirit of co-creation into the way they do their marketing, and as an exemplar. So it's been an
Uh,
amazing journey.
it's great that you talked about UK, because you know that I always teasing you about who is the British person more known in Portugal, and I say it's not the Queen of England, but it's Stewart Noakes, because if we go to a major event such as Web Summit, everyone knows that Stu is somewhere else, because everyone will find out a huge amount of people around or surrounding you and talking with you. And that is very funny to see. Besides, if we are friends, we know how you are. It's funny to see how people engage with you, and that's why I'm always teasing you with it. You're more known as the Queen of England, and it's interesting because with this knowledge, let's put it this way, between commas, this knowledge of being more known than the Queen, um, you had the chance to talk with a lot of people in Portugal and a lot of people in India and US and UK that probably people will never connect with each other if it wasn't connection liaison called Stewart Noakes. How you
Well,
feel when you heard this and you see, because I know that is something that happens on regularly, people saying, well, thank you for this that happened because you helped us to connect with A, B, and C. How you feel when this happened?
so I'm a strange person in the sense that I made a resolution about 7 years ago to only spend the majority of my time with people that I liked. And it seems like an odd thing to consciously do. You know, we all do it subconsciously as well. But in work and in life and the blend that is, you know, what we do in startups, I make that conscious choice. And in Portugal, I found everywhere amazing people that I chose to spend my time with because I thought they were really cool. And I found pockets of these kind of people everywhere. But I found so many in Portugal. It's been, you know, part of the love of the country is the connections that I've made. And when people in the UK or the US ask me, why do you spend time in Portugal? I just look at them, I say, look, it's the least hassles per capita ecosystem I've ever worked in. There's more people there that I've met that I love and respect than any other country. And so it's a great pleasure to introduce the people that I now know in that frame of reference to each other, and to see people that I say, you know, it's a great pleasure to know you and I enjoy your company and I hope you enjoy the company of other people. But the bond in there is that I feel the energy is right to do so. And interestingly, one of the observations that a close friend of mine made was she watched me in a room where somebody that's the opposite of this experience, somebody who I maybe don't get on with, came into the professional environment. And she said to me, you know, I watched you and you physically changed. You physically changed as this person walked into the room because I could see you were no longer open. I could see you were closed. And that person and I do not do business together very well. It's a very difficult thing. And I choose not to work with that person. But everything else stems from the positivity of the right connections and the right energy. Just happens to be bucket loads of it in Portugal, and that's why it seems to work.
Let me thank you for from the Portuguese people side, because everyone enjoys a lot your positivity, your openness to talk with our entrepreneurs and with our startups, and that's why you are one of those that everyone always think as one of our guys and someone that we can trust. Uh,
Thanks, Fernand.
it's true, and you know it from the number of companies that invite you every single month to be part of their boards and to support them working and their development. And talking about that, at this moment, probably you don't have enough fingers to know to nominate the the number of companies that you are on board and the number of companies that raised a great amount of money on this startup scale up they are doing. And some of them are very, very interesting to see. Some of them are not so known in the Portuguese ecosystem. Some of them are more international. But there are a lot of entrepreneurs that trust you and you look at you as someone they can talk with and with they can have some mentorship to know where to go and if they are doing the right steps or not. I know that we both of us we have a common story with one startup that one day 2 minutes before one of your demo nights, you, me, and Pedro were talking with these girls that were in a startup company, and we said, we can see where you are a startup, because they were like for 2 years doing the same thing, and the work wasn't going anywhere. And after talking with you, Pedro, and Hai, and a few other people that were in that event, they decided to change everything, to change their way of seeing the business. And they started to prosperate. And they said, we don't want any longer to be called a startup. We want to be called a company. Uh, we want to be called entrepreneurs, not startup entrepreneurs. And we are changing our vision of our business. And they did it, and they are doing it with uh, quite good success rate.
They're doing great. They're doing
Yeah,
great. Absolutely.
and it's funny to see this. Um, Sometimes being in the startup ecosystem, it's also to say no, and saying a no of no, you're not a startup. This is not your business. You should don't you should think, and you should be focused on not being rotulated, have a brand, being branded as a startup, but as a quality company in a certain area. Um, but this is difficult to say to an entrepreneur that is in the startup circus, right?
Yeah, but it's a choice, and it's a strategic choice, but it's also an authentic choice that you need to make about what kind of company you are, just like what kind of business you're in and what kind of value you add. And I guess probably the perspective that you and I are able to give, and Pedro and others are able to give, is because we're slightly outside and detached of what they're doing. We can see it with slightly colder eyes, and we can help give them this kind of advice. And I'm lucky enough to have been involved in enough organizations now and gone from start to exit in those organizations to have some, I don't know what you call it, like a rear view mirror or a different lens that I can apply to things, which is great. And across Lisbon, Boston, and Bangalore, I think now the tally is something like 450 or 500 companies I've mentored and coached at some point, which also gives you a curious depth of different perspectives that you can add into conversations. But the key, as always, is the multidiscipline, multifaceted conversations. You can never solve big problems or even change perspectives by having the same people in a different room, or even the same people in the same room. What you need is different people and people with differences to look at it. And I think that's the beauty of the combined effect of the Canopy community, is we have a lot of differences in there. We've been deliberate about it, and bringing lots of diverse opinions and ideas together. And I shall obviously mention Rajesh. He's one aspect of one dimension of the community, versus government ministers that come in, versus investors that come in, versus students that come in, versus other entrepreneurs that come in. And that those differences is what makes it all strong, and what gives the opportunity for people to learn the most. It's a huge part of the Canopy recipe, and the co-founder Matt in Boston, this was his dream at the beginning, was how you could find the right DNA in all walks of life, and when you bring it together, you make really magical things happen.
And one of the things that I also see from your work is you don't like to brand a place, specific place or a specific region as the new Silicon Valley or the new innovation market. You look at it and you see this is the innovation path that you need to go through. This is a business path that you need to go through. And this has to do also with those almost 500 companies that you mentorship until now, right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you look at that side and you look at our manifesto for going forward. A huge part of it is looking in what some people call secondary and tertiary cities and helping them to evolve their own ecosystems. And I think COVID is actually going to accelerate that as well, because people are much more starting to feel like they don't need to be in a large urban center to do things, and they can do it in a much more distributed way, and they'll choose to do it in places that are more rural or less built up, and different price points in different countries as a result. And that's very good for lots of different things. In the UK, the phrase is called relocalization, but I think it's really just a more even distribution across the planet and the surface of the planet. Who knows how many people will be living in big urban conurbations by 2054. It was thought that more than 80% of the world will be in pre-pandemic would be in those kind of situations by 2054. I think in reality now, if the trend goes in the right direction, it'll be probably more like 30%, and there'll be a much more even distribution around the place. Well, let's see.
Let's see, really. Just to close, one of the things that I really admire on Canopy is the range of events that you create and you develop in different with different views and different goals to the community. You have the demo night, you have a few, at least 4 to 5 other events that are regular, and they exist and they never stop. That's the coolest thing, as you said.
Consistent and persistent. Nelson always says consistent and persistent.
The persistence that that make you remain on those events. You want to talk a little bit about each one of them?
Well, I guess the first thing is the demo night, which is the signature, and that's now run in 4 regions, 3 regions in Portugal and in the UK on a monthly basis. And then we obviously have a global demo night that happens every year in August. And so they're now all consistent and persistent on being different Tuesdays of each month. And with 4 regions and 4 weeks in the month, that means every week of the month has a demo night somewhere in the Canopy world, which is great. And then we have what we call the global events, which are ones which are pretty much online all the time because they create a global audience. And that's the Founder Fridays every second Tuesday of the month, where we talk or interview a different founder to find out, without any judgment at all, what makes them tick, and to hold them up as examples of the fact that there are many ways to do things and many different ways of thinking about things. And here are, we've got 25, 26 examples so far from those events. The How-To series, which is on the 3rd Friday of every month, and that's transferring knowledge really from experts and people who've just done stuff to people who need that knowledge. The last one was from Cecile, who's one of the co-founders of Canopy Lisbon. She's now a digital nomad based out of Mexico. And one of the things she does is help people prepare their pitch decks, so to get their first stories out there to raise money. And she transferred that knowledge in an hour, how she would build a deck, what she thinks is important in the stories, really what she does for consultancy, but actually gifting that knowledge to people who want to try and pick it up and do it themselves. And that's a brilliant hour. And then twice a year, we also have the Future of Work and Education series, where we look at what will the future of work be, and how does that match with what's needed in education, and how will people be educated. And that's great. Last year we ran that in person in Boston, London and Lisbon, and brought together all those things into a global panel, which then somebody from each of the ecosystems spoke in one sort of webinar edition. And those things are tremendous, and it's amazing. All the echoes and reflections we had from those series over the last couple of years are playing out in the pandemic world and being accelerated in the pandemic world. So, like I say, one of the awesome things about these events is I enjoy them, partly because I never know quite what's going to happen, and there's a lot of different co-creation things that go to bringing them together. But there's definitely a monthly rhythm that you'll find in Canopy as a community that. Particularly for me with Lisbon, there is a demo night happening once a month on the first Tuesday, and the weeks are about working with people that are going to be on that, getting the stuff promoted, getting ready with everybody to make sure we've got joined up stories, and we treat it like a team sport, so everybody's helping each other on the evening, and then getting to run it on that particular first Tuesday, and then enjoying that, but then also reflecting back in the week after with everybody about how it's all worked, and getting out what we call actionable outcomes, which is the meaningful ways people want to be helped each month. So when they register, we give them a chance to say, I'd really love a follow-up conversation with you about raising funds or coaching or marketing or something. And when people do that, we reach out to them and we see how we can help them in the next month. And so each event then spurs 10, 15, 20, 45 different discussions that happen over that month to try and help people.
Well, you know that I'm always telling you that we need to get around when you come to Lisbon, but at this moment, even living in the pandemic situation, it's not so feasible. But let's see that everyone takes the vaccine and that we can get around again and eat a pastel de nata as you like, because I know that you're a fan of pastel de nata.
No, I'm a big fan, but you know, my number one cake in Portugal is the cake de manteiga. That's the number one. It needs to be warm and to come with a galao, and then I'm super happy for the rest of the day, no problem. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's all good, right? There's no bad cake, but if you're gonna go with the top
We
of the
need to go
tree for
for
me,
that.
the cake de manteiga all the way.
And we can do again the awesome people breakfast as you used to do. That is something very interesting also to get around with people. And keep up with your amazing and positive energy that helped a lot of entrepreneurs during the first phase of the pandemics not to go down and think that everything was wrong, and giving a little bit of hope to everyone. Thank you for everything, Stu, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks, Fernando. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me today.